name is Ray Bromberg. I'm from Videotropics program, and we're at Clearwater St. Pete Airport Air Museum. It's been here for quite a few years now. It used to be across the street, and it has moved over to the other side, which is closer to the field. They restore old military aircraft. When they get them in, they're not in the condition that you see today. They're considered really junk, if you want to call it that. When they get done with them, they look like flyable aircraft. All you have to do is get in and turn the key, and they will go.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome you to a brief tour of the Florida Military Aviation Museum. We're located at the St. Petersburg Clearwater International Airport, and we're open 4 days a week. Before we forget it, we might like to remind you that there is free admission for any types of civic, scout groups, or CAP groups. Other than that, we have a normal admission fee. First aircraft we'd like to talk about today very briefly is this plane immediately behind me, which is an F86D called a Saber Dog. This aircraft was used extensively in the early 50s, and it was an all-weather interceptor. This aircraft was designed to intercept Russian bombers which could be attacking this country. As you can see underneath the aircraft, we have 24 unguided missiles. These were called Mighty Mouse missiles, and they were fired off at the enemy bombers in a shotgun type effect. This particular aircraft had been in a park in a little small town in Mississippi, and during the Vietnam War, some anti-war peace protesters attacked the airplane and hacked it up very badly using axes and all types of equipment such as that. The Air Force in turn gave it to us. We've had it here at the museum for 5 years, and we spent several thousand hours rejuvenating the bird. Our next aircraft is a jet trainer, quite a bit different from the last aircraft, which was an all-weather interceptor. This was used probably to train about 90% of the pilots that are presently flying in the United States Air Force. Its nickname was the Tweety Bird because of a very high shrieking sound it made when the plane was taxiing on the ground. This particular aircraft had been at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the Air Force Museum, where it had been suspended on cables in the ceiling of a building, one of the museum buildings, and the Air Force loaned this to us. If you saw the motion picture of Apocalypse Now, you'll recognize our next aircraft. This is an old Vietnam veteran, a UH-1 helicopter, commonly referred to as the Huey. The formal name for this aircraft was the Iroquois, but most of us who served in Vietnam know the old Huey. Anytime you see any Vietnam War movies and they show helicopters in them, odds are it's going to be this type of an aircraft. This aircraft was loaned to us from the Army Aviation Museum at Fort Rucker, Alabama, and was used to train helicopter pilots until just about 6 months ago when the Army people turned this over to our museum. Another beautiful specimen of a military-type helicopter. This aircraft is a Neptune patrol bomber. This particular airplane had flown out of Jacksonville Naval Air Station in the early 50s, and this aircraft was used to attack enemy surface ships and submarines. You can see in the nose of the aircraft we have 20mm cannon barrel protruding, and it also carried 5-inch rockets under the wings, along with bombs. A similar aircraft to this, called the Truculent Turtle, made the world's non-stop reciprocating engine unrefueled distance record many years ago, and it flew from Perth, Ohio to the United States unrefueled. This wasn't beat until a Rattan's aircraft just a few years ago circled the world unrefueled. It's a very interesting aircraft, and believe it or not, most of the restoration on this was done by some military people from MacDill Air Force Base of all places. Well, we've left someone out, and that's the United States Coast Guard. Our next aircraft is an H34 Helicopter, which old-time residents of the St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay area will recognize as one of the rescue aircraft, which was flown by the United States Coast Guard out of the St. Pete Air Station down when they were flying down by Bayfront. This is a trusty old aircraft. In fact, it's still used by the British royal family as their personal helicopter. Come to the museum, we'll open this thing up if you have a group, and we'll let you climb in. You can see what it is to sit inside this type of a helicopter. Jet age aviators won't know what I'm doing, but the old-timers will know what the old task was of pulling the props through to get oil in the cylinders of the aircraft before you started the engines. This aircraft here is an AT-11. It's a Kansan. was used to train aircrew members right here in Florida during World War II. It has a plexiglass nose where they had the famed Norden bomb sight where they used to drop bombs, and other versions of this aircraft had a gun turret on the top where they would train aerial gunners. Another beautiful aircraft. This will be the next aircraft to undergo restoration by the museum. We want to thank the people at the National Aviation Academy for recovering all of the fabric surfaces on the planes. This particular bird was built in 1939 and will have the old Army Air Corps colors on it. Our next featured aircraft is an A4 Skyhawk jet fighter. This aircraft was used in the Vietnam War as well as during Operation Desert Shield. Our particular Skyhawk was dedicated to all of the missing in action in the Vietnam War, and it was painted up in the colors of a Lieutenant Junior Grade Edwards, who was flying off the aircraft carrier Constellation and was missing in action. We dedicated it to the MIAs approximately 5 years ago. This is the largest produced jet fighter in the world. These aircraft are still actively used by many countries. This big round pipe you see sitting out in the front here is not a cannon. This is an in-flight refueling probe. This aircraft could stay up almost indefinitely when it took on fuel from tanker aircraft. The tanker aircraft lowered a large funnel-shaped basket-type device, and the pilot of the fighter plane would fly up and engage this, and they could transfer fuel on board to the A4 Skyhawk. As I said, they could almost stay airborne indefinitely. This is an F102 Delta Dagger. This was a supersonic all-weather interceptor aircraft which replaced the F86Ds which we'd previously seen. This aircraft is very unique in aviation annals because it carried an air-to-air guided missile which was armed with an atomic weapon. The intent was that they would intercept Soviet aircraft over the polar ice cap area and fire these atomic armed weapons at them to destroy them before they could get within the continental United States.